November 18th, 2023. Well, we're going to get in today on the issue of what's happening in the whole war against Hamas and sort of fallout issues from that as well. Um, to the actual tactical situation, it looks to me like at this point, basically Israel has managed to basically cut off and encircle the northern part of the Gaza Strip, where apparently the bulk of the Hamas infrastructure and command centers are located, underground tunnels and so forth. And it looks like that phase of the operation has succeeded, and it looks at this point. Last numbers I heard was something like the Israelis had 37 killed in action and 250 wounded in that operation. Although probably the numbers are higher by now, and, and but it, and it's so essentially what's going on now. I think is an attempt to get into these tunnels and so forth. I know there's a lot of discussion of the hospital that was that they entered, and of course they found weapons caches and so forth. And apparently in the vicinity they found a dead hostage. So um, they may have. It seems to me like that's most likely that it was pretty clear cut and telegraphed that the Israeli military was heading in that direction. So it's likely that they'd already moved away from that location before anybody got to them. Although right now, I guess that the real structures apparently, as far as we can tell, are located underneath the hospital. And so I don't know how I've heard that depths of something like 30 meters deep or maybe more. so so anyhow, so that's ongoing. And the other thing that appears to be going on with this also is the use of drones, robotically controlled drones, to go into the tunnels and perhaps either use explosives or these so-called sponge bomb things to block off areas. There's also talk about flooding tunnels, and so all this is going on. And the flooding is supposed to try to flush the Hamas fighters out into the open, because otherwise they pop out of the tunnels at convenient locations and fire on vehicles with RPGs and then go back under. So that's kind of the action we've seen. The fact is, I think that the Israeli army is really not really ideally configured, let's say, for this kind of combat. It's really more designed for open desert battles against similar armies. Um, focused on heavy mechanized divisions and so forth. Whereas this is kind of the area where light infantry, particularly highly trained light infantry, is at a premium. And so although armor is useful, of course, to provide fire support and backup, when it leads without infantry nearby, it tends to become somewhat vulnerable to these ambushes and so forth. So that's kind of what's been going on there militarily. But other factors are also in play that we're interested in as well. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like there. If you haven't subscribed, we're always looking for more subscribers. And of course, you can forward the links to this to other people that might be interested. Yeah, so that's the kind of a tactical thing. On the other hand, we have a diplomatic front, which we've had a lot of pushback from surrounding countries. I guess Erdogan of Turkey has been particularly outspoken, and there's even been some meetings between the Saudis and the Iranians and the Egyptians. I think the whole thing is that the mass public is sort of upset, but since these governments are not really democracies, um, and because the U.S. has a lot of influence and they pretty much are dependent on U.S. military arms for their militaries. As I pointed out in previous videos, I don't think they're going to take any actual military operations. Now, diplomatic operations are another issue. There's all this continual discussion of war crimes. Of course, my view on war crimes is that's kind of in the eye of the beholder. I generally think that's a way to legitimize punishing the defeated enemy more than an objective standard. I mean, after all, we did a lot of things that by the standards of today would be considered war crimes in World War II, with mass fire bombings of cities and so forth. But of course, since we won the war, um, that we didn't punish ourselves for it. We did rightfully punish, by the way, I want to emphasize, rightfully punish the Nazis for what they did, because they committed hideous atrocities and genocide. And by the way, I would say in this instance, nothing here currently on either side of the thing rises to the level of genocide. This term is being thrown out loosely. As horrible as the massacre of 1,400 innocent Israelis was, it doesn't count as a genocide. It is an atrocity of an atrocious nature, and they've said, well, the worst since the Holocaust. Okay, I agree with that, but it's not, a significant percentage of the Israeli population. Similarly, what's happening in Gaza is not genocide either, because it's not killing a significant number of the population. And furthermore, as far as we can tell, none of it's designed to kill civilians as such. It's just that when they're in the area of legitimate military targets, um, they get hit as well if they can't get out of the way. And as I understand that Hamas is deliberately trying to make sure a significant number of civilians are sort of trapped in these areas so they can't get out. However, another problem is going to be looming here. While Israel, I think, can pretty much continue to pursue the northern Gaza strategy, probably to completion, the question is what happens after that, because you have the southern Gaza positions where all the people have been told to leave northern Gaza have gone to, but okay, Egypt is not letting them into their territory, and Israel certainly is not letting them into their territory. So that leaves us with a bit of a dilemma here, do we not? I mean, where do they go? And also, we're beginning to hear reports that, everything's disrupted. The amount of food rations that are available for everybody, the amount of water, the amount of fuel that's available. Of course, the problem with that is the fuel then is useful to support Hamas activities and keep their tunnels air conditioned and supplied with electricity, as opposed to what might be used to provide civilians and hospitals with electricity. And so it becomes a conundrum. What do you do next? And I think that's where Israel may run into a roadblock, although we'll see. I don't think, okay, after the northern Gaza situation is solved, which has still got a ways to go, what do you do in the south, or do you do anything? I think at that point the diplomatic pressures could become unbearable. At the moment, I think that the U.S. is pretty well sticking by the Israelis, and there's all this talk about this world court and war crime trials, and of course, a lot of these are somewhat arbitrary. I mean, we've got Putin indicted for war crimes, largely, as I understand it, and I'm not sure what the circumstances are, of removing children from combat zones. Now, I don't know. It's unclear to me whether they're really saying that they took children that were in the care of their parents away from the parents, or that simply the children were stranded there, maybe because the parents, well, whatever. That's unclear. But I mean, this is. I don't think this is true. This is a little bit arbitrary. But so if they decide to go after the Israelis on this and indict Netanyahu or whatever, I don't know who it becomes a pretty serious situation. I don't know. Again, that is a dilemma that could come up in the future too. I think it's outrageous in my opinion, but because I think it's kind of arbitrary. It's like whatever these Europeans think is bad, they'll go against, and whatever they think is okay, they will just let slide. It's like trying to police the world like this is a little dubious, but we'll see what happens. But that's an issue out there. But again, I don't think that Israel can politically stand, the issue of mass fatalities due to disease and starvation and drought and dying of thirst. And so at some point, it seems to me like this humanitarian crisis that is just precipitated by the nature of the combat becomes a limiting factor. But we'll see again how that plays. Domestically, of course, we have all these groups that are protesting. Of course, the other day we had a very large pro-Israel rally in D.C. But you're having these ongoing other anti-Israel rallies. I still largely stick to my position. This is largely a group of what I call a combination of the various Muslims, a lot of whom are foreign students and the like, not even necessarily citizens, along with, but some citizens, of course, too, along with what always referred to as the Hate America crowd, kind of the unification of things like BLM and Antifa and other groups of that sort, who always seem to oppose the mainstream of the U.S. policy. Um, that seems to be kind of the norm for those individuals. So, but I don't think they're going to have a lot of overall political influence, but it is going to be a bit of a nuisance to the Democrat Party, because they're starting to get some of the same treatment that Republicans were getting during the Trump period. It's coming back to bite them a little bit, and it's unclear what they do about it, because on the other hand, the Jewish community is still larger, and far more of it is voting citizens. Plus, there's a lot more money there, which can contribute to campaigns. So it becomes a tricky issue of how they deal with this. And of course, that's going to be another advantage for the Republicans. Of course, the big Democrat issue is this whole abortion issue, of course, and that's well. Meanwhile, apparently our Supreme Court has got the brilliant idea of trying to impose racial quotas on congressional districts or something. And I don't think that race has anything to do with the way that Republicans are trying to district things. I think it's based on political orientation. Now, that may correlate to race, but that's not the same thing as racial discrimination. And it seems like the court's kind of letting us down on that one. But anyhow, we'll see where this plays out. Of course, we're having the ongoing, pre-primary debates, and that's still, churning forward, if we will. But I think we'll see. Have to see, whether the situation in the Middle East escalates. So far, I think that Hezbollah in the north has been engaged in kind of showing the flag type operations, but not really fully committing. And again, they could do a lot of damage if they do, because they've managed to build up a massive missile arsenal over the years that have been provided by the Iranians. And that's so that becomes a issue that we'll have to keep an eye on. I mean, and that may be the area where conceivably the U.S. could get involved. Although I kind of think we won't, but the possibility if the Hezbollah rocket forces were to be fully engaged and completely suppress or mostly suppress the Israeli air bases, as I pointed out before, that's a possibility that where we could get involved if we chose to. And again, that leads to, obviously we'd like to stay out of active combat, and we're already, of course, having those bases that we have in the area are coming under various drone attacks and so forth from Iranian-backed or sympathetic groups. And so far, I think we've been hesitant to really retaliate heavily for fear the thing will escalate. And obviously, the administration doesn't want that to occur. Other factions may have different attitudes on that. But anyway, so that's kind of about the way it goes, and we'll just have to keep an eye on the situation. I think the actions in northern Gaza will continue for some time, and maybe the more inflammatory aspects will die down for the moment there. But in the south, the problem is there's still going to be Hamas units in the south who will have rockets and will be continued from time to time to fire into Israeli territory, which will lead to retaliatory strikes and more collateral damage, given the fact that now we've got the civilian population of Gaza so concentrated in that area. Anyway, I'll wrap this up for now. I'll be, of course, posting this on Rumble as well, and the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. Until next time.